We went for dinner at Range Restaurant, and they had a blood refrigerator from Red Cross for their bar refrigerator. Oh. So we were talking about that blood refrigerator, and then we said, let's open a butcher shop. And then we knew of this one, and we said, okay, let's go tomorrow.
Welcome to the Trades Show. This is a show about modern craft work. Each episode, I step into the workshops of skilled artisans across industries, from metalsmithing and butchery to woodworking and shoe cobbling. I'm your host, Briana Ottoboni. The Trades Show explores what it means to be a craft worker, the revival of the artisan trades, and the return to what makes us human, the ability to make with our hands. Because in every trade, there's a rhythm. The whir of a lathe, the hiss of a solder, the slice of a blade. And through these rhythms, we return to ourselves. Because making isn't just what we do, it's who we are. I'm so glad you're here. Today on the Trades Show, I sit down with Angela Wilson, butcher and owner of Avedano's, a beloved craft butcher shop in San Francisco. Our conversation today spans sustainable sourcing, the heritage of butchery, the trials of owning a small business, and the future of our food system. Our conversation takes place on site at Avedano's, nestled in the Bernal Heights neighborhood.
Check.
I know. Thank you so much for letting me into your space.
Thank you for coming here.
Of course. So I always start with asking the same kind of couple grounding questions. So the first is, how would you describe butchery? So both in what you do, but also what it means to you.
What I do every day is very routine oriented, which is good for me because I'm very routine oriented. The setup looks the same every day. And when you break down a whole animal, I pretty much do the same routine with that too. So I'll start with if it's a lamb, we'll start with cutting the belly off first and like kind of opening it up so you can see what you're working with. And then you'll separate the legs off and then the middle parts off and then separate the shoulders. So I go about it the same each way. And because I'm a martial artist, a lot of where the joints break in animals would be the same places you would find a pressure point in a human. So that was kind of easy for me to learn where to make cuts because of that.
And just bring us into your world a little bit. So you are the owner of Avedano's. What does it look like for you to start your day, open the shop? What does a typical day in your life look like?
Yeah, so I'm the owner of Avedano's since 2007. We're open 7 days a week, 12 to 6, which there's opening and closing. 4 days a week, and then starting at 9 to 6 on the weekends where we do breakfast sandwiches. So my typical day is I don't work on Sunday and Monday, but other days I'll come in here, check on people, even on my days off. I usually get here at around 11:45 before we open. Somebody else comes and does a setup that I did today, usually, except for I do that on the weekends. I do a split shift. But I usually come in, help with the lunch rush, do a bunch of tasks, and then I go home for a nap at about 2 or 3, and then I come back and close down and figure out the ordering and help for the dinner rush and prepare my dinner. And I'd say I have a nice lifestyle here, and I'd say this is like a lifestyle job for me. I live just less than 5 minutes away, so I can dart home very easily or dart over here if I need to. I do 2 split shifts, like I said, a week, which is fine for me. I try to, and for everyone here, we try to go on vacations often. And so we'll work a lot to cover shifts, and then we can go away for a week at a time, like every couple months or something like that. So I try to maintain a healthy work-life balance. Luckily, I work with very competent and strong individuals that probably put in a lot more work than me at this point.
Yeah, you earned that.
Yeah.
And how did you get here? You described a little bit about your background in martial arts, but I know you come from a background in the restaurant industry. How did you find butchery?
So, yeah, I started off cooking Chinese food in Santa Cruz at the Swan Heavenly Goose when I was in college. And then I opened another restaurant there called Gabriella Cafe that's still there. That was a farm-to-table restaurant. And the chef that was there at the time is this guy, Jim Denovan, who does Outstanding in the Field, which is...
yes, it's on my bucket list of...
Yeah, so I did that. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And so at Gabriella, we had a bike with a trailer on it, and we got to go to the farmer's market to get all the produce with our bike. So meeting a lot of farmers, and that was back in, 1991, 92. And so I had some knowledge of local Santa Cruz farmers and stuff like that. And in 95, I started a chai company, and I was self-employed for a long time. And I was a restaurant cook here in San Francisco from probably 93 to 2003 at a restaurant called Laghi Restaurant. That was an Italian restaurant. So I just came across this place with two other friends. We said, let's open a restaurant. And I lived here in Bernal Heights, and Avedano's wasn't Avedano's at the time, but it was an empty storefront that was obviously an old butcher shop. And we said, let's open a butcher shop. And so we came the next day, met the landlord who happened to be here. And then we said, we want to open a butcher shop. And he said, okay. And then he kind of just ghosted us for about 3 months. And that was when the time his father, who was a butcher here, was dying. And then on April Fool's Day, he called us and said, okay, you guys have a butcher shop. And we were like, well, we don't know if we really want a butcher shop.
What was the path from wanting to open a restaurant in the city to finding this space and really just committing to pursuing it as a butcher shop?
It was just one night. We went to me and my former partners, Melanie Eisman and Tia Harrison. They worked together at Sociale Restaurant, and we talked about opening a restaurant at Range. We went for dinner at Range Restaurant, and they had a blood refrigerator from Red Cross for their bar refrigerator. So we were talking about that blood refrigerator, and then we said, let's open a butcher shop. And then we knew of this one, and we said, okay, let's go tomorrow. And that's what happened, truthfully.
How did you learn butchery?
We just came in here, and it was a real wreck. And so we got it April 1st, and I think we opened July 15th. We thought we needed a crime scene cleaner because it stunk like really bad in here. And it turned out the floor was really rotted out. And I've spent literally $100,000 on this floor, and it still gives me problems. But so we just made the shop that we thought was cute, and it was going to be a butcher shop, but we didn't really know what kind of a butcher shop. And it was kind of before the whole animal thing. So there was Fleischer's in upstate New York. And when we first opened, we got a lot of press because we were women. Yeah. But we didn't think anything of us being women in the industry. I don't think we did a whole lot of thinking of anything. We were just kind of doing it. And we just programmed the scale, and we had a photo shoot the day before we opened with this guy who was a photographer for Meat Paper magazine. It was a first issue, and it was some NPR reporters started it. And so they put our picture in the New York Times talking about this little meat publication, which led to a full page spread in Food and Wine magazine and countless other publications, mostly because we were women, and it was kind of the beginning of the farm to table slow food movement. But we didn't really realize that. We kind of figured it out as we were just going along. Yeah. And it just was a lot of trial and error. And then there was a guy who would come around named Dave the Butcher, who was like, oh, because we all worked for free for like over a year. And
yeah, you guys did it on the side, right? You guys kept your full-time jobs.
So I would have my chai company, and they both worked at the restaurant. So they would work during the week, and I had a 2-year-old at the time. So I would watch him during the week, and then I worked Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with one of the other Sociale people named Julio, who still works here. And it was just me and Julio. And we just learned on the fly. And then Dave came along and was like, oh, you need to hire me. And I said, oh, I can't afford you. And he said, you can't not afford me. You need somebody who knows what they're doing. And so we did hire him. And he too learned on the job. He acted like he knew a lot, but he learned a whole lot on the job here, as we all did. And luckily it was an easier time to start a small business because I took a loan out from my house for $100,000 to start this. And we ended up paying it back over a long time, probably at least 4 or 5 years, and working for free. So there was a lot of sweat equity in this, and a lot of huge learning curves where probably meat wasn't even the focus because we didn't know. We were all coming from restaurant industry background. So we were
Learning how to start a business.
Yeah, and approaching butchering like restaurant, and it's not, because the meat case dictates what you're going to do. So we have a lot of prepared food here and sandwiches. Like, they are just a consequence of that meat case, because everything needs a home at the end of it.
Yes.
As I've been quoted of saying before, the only harder industry is flowers, because you can't marinate and eat a flower. So my best friend down the street has a flower shop, and she's giving away the flowers, because at the end of the day, if you don't sell them, what are you going to do with them? So at least here we have homes for everything, and we try not to put a single thing in the garbage. So anything that goes in the garbage is really, the weight is money.
Yeah.
So we can weigh that, and we can just figure out how much money we've thrown away. So we make dog jerky, bone broth, chicken broth, pork skin cheese for dogs, chicken skin for dogs, and then like the lamb sandwich, all sorts of the sandwiches. What sandwiches we have here, minus the Smoky Mo, which is the most popular sandwich, we buy. Before, we'd use all the chicken and stuff for that. But now we make the smoked chicken salad, and that's a great seller. But we buy the turkey for Smoky Mo. And that is just like, really gets people in the door, that sandwich. Yeah.
Can you go back for a second and talk about how you guys were really highlighted as women in what I think is thought of as a pretty male-dominated industry? But I've heard you talk before about how that's only really true in the U.S.
Right, yeah. So even when we first opened the doors here, some guy came in and was like, pretty good for women. Yeah. And we were like, what? Like, screw off. But yeah, it didn't occur to us. But in most other countries in the world, the women are the butchers, and the men aren't the butchers. So it's not that odd in other places. And for us, I'd say our country's come a long way, because none of us, it even crossed our mind, truthfully, that this was something we couldn't do or out of our reach or even anything odd at all. It was only when people acted like that we thought.
Yeah. Since you've owned it for the past 15 years, have you seen any growth or expansion of women in butchery, specifically either in this area or just the U.S.?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we've mentored a lot of people, and I'd say, and there was Lindy and Grundy in L.A., which was a boutique butcher shop, the same, and they came out here and we became good friends. Unfortunately, they didn't last, and 4505, we let him work out of here in the beginning when he started, and he had a butcher shop. And other women, I've had a lot of different women who've worked here, and there's a lot of women in the industry. I see, like in the American team for the World Butcher Competition is some women.
Wow. I didn't even know that was...
Yeah, so my partner, Tia, started the Butchers Guild. But there is a World Butcher Competition that happens once a year, where they make like the best case. So they set up the case the way I set it up today. Wow. But they make crazy different roasts, and different countries do different cuts. There's no uniform cuts. So it's just what different places do, what makes the best case and stuff.
Very cool. And when you were first starting, I know you had some people here who were teaching you how to learn on the job, but what was the process? Like, how did you learn the technique and skills that you needed to butcher a whole animal? So
I already was a restaurant cook, so I could do little animals like rabbits, chickens, ducks. And it's kind of translatable to bigger animals, but just repeating, being shown and repeating and having the confidence.
Who is showing you
usually Dave the butcher, and then Oscar Yadra, who is the main butcher at Canyon Market. And he is, I don't know, third generation Mexico City butcher. Him and his brothers usually are the ones who win all the competitions. And that's who taught us cows and stuff like that.
Can you walk us through the process of butchering a whole animal from start of sourcing the animal, farms that you work with, to it going home with someone?
Sure. A good example, a young farmer that started off around the same time as us is Root Down Farms. And that's a chicken farmer where we get our chickens from, one of the places, and she's in Pescadero. But when she started her farm, we went down to her farm and helped her butcher some hogs and kind of got started together. And that's a relationship that's been strong through the years. Our lamb farmer is Martin Emig, and his family's been lamb farmers since the 1880s, and now his daughters and their husbands have taken over the business. So that's been fun. Like, we've gone up there to visit and see where the lambs live and stuff like that. But through this time, I've seen a lot of farms come and go and farmers come and go, especially in California. So that's been tough. Yeah. Where we get our pork is in Washington State, where the farmer operates his own slaughterhouse. And it's just about 10, 12 miles away from the farm. It's all Proposition 12 compliant, which he does a European form of hoop houses.
Can you describe Prop 12 for people who aren't familiar?
Yeah, it's just about non-confinement of pigs, because mother pigs often crush their babies because they're confined too tightly with them. Voters in California voted to make that illegal. So there's Proposition 12, which only 4% of farms, last I looked, complied with it. But this farm had always just operated in this method with the hoop houses. They have a maternity ward. The pigs can go in and out. The quality of the feed is all coming from the farm. The pork is phenomenal. The fat is just clean. The meat is clean. The animal's not stressed. That's just a really great product and farm that we work with. Yeah. Beef's been a tougher story. We used to work with 5 Dot Ranch, and I was telling you before that they went out of business just because they can't make ends meet in California due to a rising cost of water. Like, when we started, people weren't carting water in. There wasn't even a drought as much in 2007. Now people are paying for water. Feed is so much more. Fires, running from fires because they were grazing in the Stanislaus Forest. And then labor, high labor costs in California has really made life for a small farmer in California difficult. So we've lost a lot of farms. I mean, I can have more than on both my hands of the farms we've lost in these last 20 or however long that we've been open, since 2007. At any rate, so when we get whole animals in, like for instance, all the chickens, we butcher all the parts in-house. So we have lots of chicken bones all the time. And with those chicken bones, we make chicken stock. And if we have too much chicken stock, then we do a 2-for-1 sale. Like, there's all the psychology behind it and different ways that we have to move things. But we butcher all the parts. So we cut them, we pack them with a cryovac machine, which is that machine over there that's very expensive as a car machine that vacuum seals things. So vacuum sealing can preserve things for a week or two. So we do a lot of that. So when we get a whole lamb in, we might leave it hanging for a bit, but generally we cut them within a couple of days of them being slaughtered. And then we cut and pack it and we take it out as we need it. And from the pandemic, we learned we used to cut a bunch of steaks and stuff and make the case look all ready for you to pick out stuff. But now we just cut to order, which people seem to like better and really helps us keep the longevity of the meat longer, because we can keep things sealed in those cryovac packs in big primal pieces and then cut them as we need them. So the pandemic served us in a lot of ways of how to do things more efficiently and keep the case fresher.
When you're butchering a whole animal, do you feel like that has any impact on your relationship to the animal or to butchery as a whole, when you're really in such close engagement with a whole animal from start to finish?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely meditative, relaxing. You see the differences of animals, Some we say are floppy, like floppy's not good.
What do you mean by floppy?
Like maybe they could be old, or like their muscles are just like not firm and it's not fun to cut. It's like kind of like cutting gum,
Yeah, when you said animals could be stressed out in how they're raised, how does that impact the meat?
When a meat is like really red or purple, like beef, that's stress hormones. So like a lighter red color would be less stress hormones. People think it affects the flavor. Yeah, I don't really know much more than what I've seen. But every animal is different, and you can really tell some higher quality meats when you're cutting it. This is like top-notch meat. What the best restaurants in the Bay Area use is what we sell. That's like, I compare it to, once you've eaten good sushi, you're not going to want to really bother with like store sushi or something. You can really see the difference. And for me, cutting different things. Sometimes I'm like, wow, look at this to my coworker. This looks so good.
What do you think causes the biggest difference between?
I think genetics, but I also think feed. I think stress. I think weather. When it's really hot or really cold. Like, for instance, sometimes we don't have eggs that are river dog eggs because it's too cold and the chickens can't lay, or it's too hot and they're stressed. There was a chain, Belcampo, before, where some of my workers worked, and it was a horizontal model. So they had farms, stores in LA, Bay Area, and they tried to grow all their own stuff. Well, first of all, farming is not a simple thing to do. Farming is a trade passed down from generation to generation. They were hiring a lot of young farmers, which is great, but young farmers don't know things. So I would see stuff coming from them where it'd be a lamb chop where there'd be this much meat and this much fat around the lamb chop because they let the lamb go a month or two too long and piling fat on. So just little nuances, like if you let a pig go too long, the fat cap is going to go from a nice fat cap like this to like that in 2 or 3 weeks. And for us, all that fat, we got to do something with it, and we're paying top dollar for that. We don't want to see that. We're going to send it back. So about trying to grow everything in one place, different animals thrive in different climates. So that's why I think that pork farm in Washington State is also really good. Like, it's on a hazelnut farm too. So they're eating like spent hazelnuts. The weather, it's nice and cool, and like it's diverse. So that's what I found, and I don't know exactly why.
Yeah, I've never even thought about the weather component. But, the timing of the...
I mean, just like spices in my chai company, every batch of chai is always going to be different because every spice is grown in a different place. It's just like an animal too. And then it's genetics, how much food it's getting, if it's a runt or whatever.
Yeah, and you talked earlier about using every part of the animal. And when you have excess fat or the tallow, can you talk about what you do with all the different parts and how you make use of all of them here?
Yeah, so I mean, like pork fat, we would use in sausages, but we also make lard. That's pork fat. With the beef fat, that's called tallow. We just sell tallow, like already purified. We also sell like leaf lard, which is pig fat that's good for baking, just in big hunks for people who are bakers. We also, with the tallow, make soap, different flavored soaps. And it's funny, that's how they used to make soap before glycerin and stuff like that. And the tallow lasts really long, the tallow soap. It doesn't melt like glycerin. So it can last like what would melt in 2 weeks. This one's going to last like a month, twice as long.
Yeah. People use it in skincare these days.
Right. Hip. It's a big TikTok fad. And we also made tallow face cream if anybody wants to get it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. And just to bring back into the sustainability conversation, there's so much impact that the meat industry, especially industrial meat practices, have on environmental sustainability. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between craft butchery and your relationship to small farms and really the end impact compared to those more industrial practices?
Sure. One thing I like to say is pay more, eat less. It's always going to cost more from a small farmer because they aren't going through the usual channels. But for a factory farmer, it's a rough life. Like for a pig farmer, there's just a few big corporations that run the pig farms, and they set the price, and the farmer has to agree on the price before the product comes out. So if something bad happens to that farmer's crop, it's going to be on him. So small farmers, they are usually working 7 days a week and have second jobs. It's a labor of love. They're spending time with their animals. Not that big farmers aren't, but I think there's more care given to them. But it's also going to cost more at the end of the day to buy from small farmers because they're doing everything themselves. Like if you look at a chicken from Safeway from Foster Farms compared to a river dog chicken, the bones just are brittle. Their feed's all GMO. Oh, chicken should cost $10. Like what they're eating costs more than $10 of their life. That's just an unsustainable situation. But I think you can definitely tell the difference. Like the chickens, when we get them here, if you bought one from factory farm, they could be so old and sticky and tacky by the time you get it. Like people who say they don't like lamb, it's because they're usually coming from New Zealand or Australia. By the time they're killed, cut, packed, shipped, sold, it's probably 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old by the time you're getting it. Where our lamb, it's slaughtered on a Tuesday, we get it on a Wednesday. We could cut it on a Wednesday and pack it, and we're getting a new one next Wednesday again. And if for some reason we don't need it, we don't order it.
Yeah. And how do you maintain that in terms of your just efficient output here? Not all of the ways that you're using all the parts of the animal, but more so like the quantities that you're ordering. Is that something that you've just developed over time?
Yeah, just develop over time. It's just kind of, you have to gamble, you know, you have to say, do you think we're going to use this much more? Because these things cost a lot. So you just have to gamble, but you also see the rhythm pattern. Like here, summer is slow because a lot of people go away. So my ordering will go down, but I do all the ordering and truthfully getting more into doing bookkeeping. So I think that's really important. And that is a real challenge to make sure that the prices are right. I find that to be one of the biggest challenges of this job is keeping up with like raising prices, and because I'm working on the counter and working for real. And I'm not rich, so I feel bad to raise prices. But I mean, if you're not on top of it, like in Whole Foods and bigger corporations, there's somebody who's watching out for those prices as a full-time job.
What affects the prices that are?
I mean, everything. Like these tariffs already are affecting some stuff I have on the shelf. Droughts, fires, inflation, wages, cost of gasoline. When I started in 2007, I mean, everything was half as much. Seriously. And I'd say that's a huge weakness on our part is raising price, because we have to change all the tags with the computer, laminate them. Like that isn't going to be any of our strong suits. We're not sitting on a computer like ever. So today, actually, we're working on doing some more raising of prices. And some ways I decided to raise prices is supply and demand too. Like for instance, the beef dog jerky, everybody wants the beef and not the other ones. $2 more for the beef. Like, and we have to squeeze money any places we can, because in a restaurant where they make the least amount of money is on the proteins. Where they make the most amount of money is on the alcohol. Well, all we have is proteins here. So it truly is a labor of love, and you have to be really smart at it. And we've gotten really smart. If you look around, not many butcher shops are still open.
Yeah.
You know?
How did you learn business sort of becomes an inherent skill set that you have to learn, and it's so different than the very physical act of butchery? And how do you learn that side of things?
I mean, a lot of it is intuitive. I think I'm just naturally a good business person, but you know, I'm also slightly lazy, and like things like raising the prices or doing things above and beyond my regular daily work is hard for me. And one of my biggest challenges to go above and beyond the daily grind, because we're open 7 days a week and there's always something to do more. And sometimes I'm like, I'm not doing that, but I have to, because then otherwise you're going to go out of business. And I've been down that path.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for local butcher shops in staying open?
Well, truthfully, I can think of 3 more. Well, if you count Buy Right, then some more. But I think if they can sell wine, that's one really helpful thing, because if 25% of the people shopping there are going to buy wine, that's something you're not going to lose money on as much. It's a bigger price point. Here we can't, because everything's grandfathered in, so I'd have to do a lot of changing. Having good products, like I'm selling some beef jerky that people are coming in exclusively for. Having better products that people, if they buy a sandwich and then they're going to buy their steak for dinner, and then we have mashed potatoes, and then they're going to grab some beef jerky, trying to drive each purchase up. Because in a small store like this, only so many people are going to walk through the door in a small neighborhood like this. And also you face the risk of, when you're raising your prices, even though you have to, you're going to price people out. Things are going to become so expensive, nobody's going to buy them. And that's kind of the place that we're at right now, not knowing what are going to be prices, you know.
And how do you balance that?
It's a tough one. That's the kind of stuff that can keep you up at night. You just have to keep your eye on it. And there's a few ways to make a business work. Increase hours, which I just did, to open earlier in the morning to capture some of the breakfast sandwich and breakfast crowds, reduce employees, or raise prices.
Yeah.
Those are like the only three ways I really can know, or dream up other ways. But let me tell you, I have had a lot. We had a meat wagon in Hayes Valley, which was a terrible idea.
What's a meat wagon?
It was an old ambulance that we turned into a butcher shop that was located in Hayes Valley where that juice shop thing is now.
Oh, yes.
And it was a butcher shop, and we had some sandwiches, but like it looked like a catering truck, so people wanted hot food off of it, but it was all raw food. It was just a terrible idea. I'm carting stuff back and forth, and if we didn't sell stuff, I've tried a lot of different ideas, mostly because this is a hard one, and I wanted to figure out something else easier. And what I finally learned is just stay here and do the work, and like me do the work.
Yeah.
Me be here. I don't think in San Francisco, or for most small business owners, is not like 20 years ago where you own a business and then you just pop in and say hi to your employees and make sure everything's going okay. No, that's not the way the economy is anymore.
Yeah. How do you maintain that? Do you train a lot of new employees on butchery and to be able to be self-sufficient in this space?
What I do is make sure I pay everybody a living wage. I pay health insurance. Pretty much everybody makes the same as what I make.
Yeah.
The key people, there's only 4 or 5 of us here, and I keep people that way. I have a retirement plan, and if I can't do those things, then I don't want to be in business. I'm not going to try to nickel and dime people in this. You're not going to keep employees, and then the quality is going to go downhill.
Yeah.
So.
Have you seen that there is either an increase or a decrease in actual number of butchers that are left, and especially in the craft butchery space?
I think there's less interest in it. I think that, as we were talking about before, it's a natural transition for older cooks because the hours are better. Mm-hmm. You have knowledge on how to use all the stuff. The pay rate is going to be probably better. It's maybe less glamorous to some people, less high pressure. But I'd say lately I've had a lot of resumes coming in from people, but I just don't need them. As I was saying before too, over these last few years, we've gotten so efficient and good at our job that I'm really proud of that. One thing that I never would consider is how proud I am is to be an employer and provide good jobs for people. We're not breaking our necks or anything like that, but we can all live, we can all save money, and we can all take vacations when we need to, but we all stick together as a group and work with each other.
That in and of itself is sustainable and helps you guys stick around.
Definitely. Yeah.
And helps everyone else stick around. For people who are interested in butchery or are curious about it, as Pat, like you said, you have so many resumes. I do think there's a increasing interest in just doing things with your hands and kind of movement back to some of these trades. What would you say to someone who's just starting out and maybe isn't down the restaurant path or is just sort of new to this space in general?
Well, we do have butcher classes every month on the 3rd Sunday. So we alternate between hogs and lamb. So that's one place. I've had interns here from City College from the culinary program. So that is down that path, but that's also a good place to start. Otherwise, YouTube, as we were talking about, does have a lot of butchery stuff on it. Starting with the chickens, I think, is a good idea.
Starting with small animals?
Yeah, I mean, you could watch a YouTube video on butchering a chicken and do it at your house and follow along pretty well. There's a lot of different classes I know around town, like Bernal Cutlery does a chicken one. I think Civic Kitchen does a chicken one.
And just to kind of wrap up, if there was one thing you wanted people to take away from this episode, what would you want it to be?
I would want it to be that our food systems are in dire need for care by the people who eat the food. We don't want Amazon to take over our food system, and our choices are becoming slim with where we buy things. In my time of having this business, as I said, I've seen a lot of farms come and go. 100 years ago, the farmer was the most revered person in society, and today they're working second jobs to do something that they're passionate about. So I would say for us and our children's sake that having clean food grown by farmers in our state is imperative for our success in the future, and that we don't want to lose our footing on our food systems and give it up to big corporations that do not care about us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I would love to end on that. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I really feel that.
I hope this episode left you feeling inspired and expanded. If you'd like to support the show, the best way is to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with the fellow craft workers or craft curious in your life. You'll find everything we talked about, including links to today's guest, in the show notes. You can follow the show on socials at TradesShow to stay up to date. And if you're listening, you can watch the full video version on YouTube. I would highly recommend. It's a treat. And if you're watching, you can stream the audio wherever you get your podcasts. If you have any questions, feedback, or guest suggestions, please reach out anytime. You'll find my contact information in the show notes or at thetradesshow.co. Until next time, stay creative, curious, and continue to honor your craft.